Inside the world's biggest banks, it's not always people calling the shots. It's these incredibly complex, powerful financial models. So today, we're going to crack open the vault and see how these things are governed. And maybe more importantly, what's the historical record, the database that actually makes them trustworthy? All right, let's dive in. And it's really true. Think about it. From deciding if you get a loan to trying to predict the next market crash, even flagging suspicious financial activity, pretty much every big decision is being driven by some kind of sophisticated algorithm. These models are basically the invisible engines running the whole show. Okay, so that leads to a huge question, right? If these models have so much power, how in the world do we know they're accurate, or fair, or even just reliable? What stops them from going completely off the rails? Well, to answer that, you kind of have to understand what these models are. The best way to think about them is like these super complex digital assets, almost like they're locked away in a vault, and they are always working, always shaping financial outcomes. That's why what's inside that vault, and just as important, the whole story of how it was built, matters a lot. So how do you manage something like that? You can't just let these algorithms run wild. And you don't. There's actually a super rigorous framework in place, a whole system of governance that's designed to bring clarity and, control to the whole process. And that brings us to this key concept, model governance. This whole thing was really pushed by regulators, like the OCC, that's the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. And listen, this isn't just a friendly suggestion. It's a hard and fast requirement. It's the rule book that forces these powerful, mysterious black boxes to be transparent and accountable. The best way to get your head around this governance thing is to think of it as a life cycle. Every single model has to go through these 4 stages, and each stage creates a piece of its permanent record, its history. First, it's developed. Then it's validated by an independent team, by the way. Then it's implemented into the real world. And finally, it's constantly monitored. See, you never just build it and forget about it. And just so we're clear, we're not talking about some obscure models in a dusty corner of the bank. No. We're talking about the heavy hitters, the big ones. Probability of default models, the ones that predict if someone's going to default on a loan. CCL models, that stands for current expected credit losses. They forecast losses way into the future. Even the BSA/AML models that hunt for money laundering. Every single one of them has to be completely explainable and auditable. Okay, so now let's get to the good part. How does all of this get stress tested? Because, look, having a framework is one thing, but it's the intense, eagle-eyed scrutiny from bank examiners that really puts these models to the test. Yeah, an examiner's whole job is basically to be the ultimate skeptic. They don't take anyone's word for anything. They have the power to walk in and say, open up that black box. And when they do, they expect to find crystal clear, totally defensible answers. And their questions come fast. They start with the most basic, fundamental thing you can ask. Is this powerful, really complex tool actually doing the one specific job you built it for? Then they start digging into the foundation. See, every single model is built on a set of assumptions. So the examiner asks, are they written down? And can you defend why you made them? There's absolutely no room for, well, it just felt right. Now, this next one is so critical. The world is always changing, right? So a model that was absolutely perfect last year could be dangerously wrong today. Examiners are always on the hunt for that decay, that performance drift, as they call it, or even hidden biases. And here it is, the ultimate test. If the model spits out some really surprising result, can an actual person at the bank explain why it did that? Because if the answer is, we don't know, the computer just said so, well, that is a gigantic red flag. So you might be wondering, why all this intensity? Why this incredibly deep level of scrutiny? Well, this system didn't just appear out of thin air. It was literally forged in the fire of a global crisis. The story really kicks off in 2008 with the financial crisis. That was just a brutal lesson in what can happen when these complex models go unchecked. So regulators responded. In 2011, they came out with this landmark guidance, SR 11-7, which basically became the Bible for model risk management. And today, that same basic framework is being stretched and evolved to cover the brand new frontier, AI and machine learning. Okay, so this brings us to the final, most important piece of the puzzle. We've seen the models, we've seen the governance, we've seen the examiners breathing down their necks. But what holds it all together? What is the real secret to trusting any of this? I really love this quote because it just nails it. The model, the algorithm, sure, it gives you an answer, but it's the human-designed system, the governance around it, that gives you the confidence, the assurance, the trust in that answer. So what is it? What's the key that lets a bank stand in front of a regulator and confidently answer all those tough questions? What's the secret inside the vault that makes this whole system actually work?
And here is the answer. It's not some kind of magic. The secret, the entire foundation of trust, is a database. It's a meticulously kept historical record of everything. Every single decision made when the model was being built. Every challenge that came from the validators. Every single time a human being overrode the model's suggestion. And, crucially, why they did it. This complete audit trail, this database history, that is the ultimate source of truth.
And that really leaves us with a huge, critical question for the future. As these black boxes, these AI models, get infinitely more complex, almost impossibly opaque, will our ability to document their history, to maintain that all-important database of trust, will it be able to keep up? Because honestly, the answer to that question is probably going to define the entire future of finance.